welcome to the April 7th Grafton School Committee meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order sustaining certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Grafton School Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. This meeting is being recorded, and we will get it out to Grafton Cable as we normally do. If you're hearing this, you're already watching it, but you can tell your friends you should be able to access the link on the Grafton Public School website. As we did before, I asked that everyone mute themselves on their computer. And for tonight, we are also suspending open comment. You should be able to chat to us on the panelists. I will take questions as appropriate and as we can. But if you have a question or concern, you can always reach out to any member of this team via email, and we will always do our best to help you. So just like last time, we'll need to take an attendance and announce all the committee members and school officials on the call, and any vote we take will have to be via roll call. Okay, so we will take attendance. So Laura Often, chair of the school committee, is here. Jennifer Connolly.
Jen Connolly here.
Melissa Maison. Oh.
Melissa Maison here.
Thank you. Heather Riley.
Heather Riley here.
Amy Marr.
Amy Marr here.
Tyler Conca.
Here.
James Dewar.
James Dewar here.
And we have Superintendent James Cummings.
Jay Cummings here.
Assistant Superintendent Tracy Kalo.
Tracy Kalo here.
And Director of Finance, Dan Gale. Excellent. Oh, he's muted.
Speakers on the agenda.
Dan Gale here.
What is that? Is that me?
No, I think that's Dan.
Oh, I could just hear my voice echoing. That's terrible. Okay. All right. We are going to kick it right off with a district update from Jay Cummings.
All right. So the three main pieces for us that we keep going back to with the updates, we're off and running with remote learning. Tracy and the staff have been doing a phenomenal job with this. In just a few minutes, she is going to give an overview of the work that's been done in that area. Dan, Betsy Labonte, and our Whitson staff have been knocking the food assistance out of the park. If you have questions about that, Dan can certainly speak to it. But we're giving out, Dan, do you know on a daily basis or per week, how many meals are we giving out? Do you know?
We're giving up around 75 a day, and we're feeding 7 days a week. So that we give out 3 meals on Fridays.
So that's been great, and that covers breakfast and lunch. And I can't say enough about Dan and Betsy and the fact that they put this we were in action just days after the closure. So it was really impressive. And then with technology, Neil Trahan and the tech team continue to do just great work in that area. They've given out over 150 Chromebooks at this point. There were more given out today. There are more going out tomorrow. I think by the end of the week, we'll be over 200. And at the same time, they've done a really nice job supporting remote learning and responding to all of the needs on the fly as we figure this out. So those are the big things on the district side. As I mentioned, Tracy's going to talk about remote learning. Did anybody have any questions, kind of global questions about where we stand as a district right now?
Do we have any idea how many people are having difficulty with connectivity since this all started, more so grade 6 to 12?
Right now, like even before all of this, we had a pretty good idea of the families that struggled with connectivity. We've contacted all of those families. We're putting out about a dozen more Khajiit. Those are those mobile hotspot units that we have. Those are being delivered. It was either today or tomorrow, being delivered and installed for those families. So once we go out to another dozen families, we think we have everybody covered right now.
Jay, I have a connected question. How are we dealing with people who have young children who certainly can't learn on their own, even with the excellent learning resources that everyone is putting out, and who may have to actually work themselves? Do we have any kind of online program for assistance for them, or indeed kids with special needs? Is there anything that's going on there?
Both of those we'll cover when we go.
Great, great.
Any other questions for Jay? All right, thank you, Jay. All right, we'll bring it over to Tracy, and she's going to share her screen, and she has a presentation to go kind of more in depth into the remote learning opportunities that are going on for our district.
Great. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so it is my pleasure to speak to phase 2 of our remote learning plan. I want to start first with speaking to the admin team and obviously the teachers across the school district who have put together a stellar plan with very short notice. And I'm so impressed with what they've done. So I'm just going to speak to the generalities of it, and then I'm happy to take any questions. So when we're looking at phase 2, we're really looking at a dual purpose. We're looking to deepen previous learning in grades K through 5. And then we're going to move to presenting some new content and skills in grades 6 through 12. The format is technically a virtual learning experience, but I want to kind of explain what that means, because it could look at different ways. It could be live instruction. It could be pre-recorded videos. It could be a link to a site that has some information that's pertinent to learning. It could be skill building activities, discussion boards on Schoology. It could look a lot of different ways depending on the content and skills and basically the scope and sequence as to where we are in our curriculum. And the process is pretty simple. K through 5 is going to put out a weekly schedule. 6 through 12 are going to take advantage of their Schoology courses. And really, we felt that our focus really should be on feedback to make sure that we're moving learning forward, and interaction with the students to make sure that we're maintaining that connection that I know that students and teachers are really starting to miss with this hiatus. And last but not least, grades 6 through 12 will grade. They will do so only on a pass-fail basis. And I can speak to that a little bit as we move on. So when we look at North Grafton and South Grafton elementary schools, you can see at the top of their graph that we decided to focus on one content area a day to ensure that students and/or parents were not completely overwhelmed. We didn't want to put a situation in which we had a kindergartner or first grader tackling science, social studies, and math and ELA all at the same time. We just felt it would be too much for them and too much for their parents, given that most parents are home working.
Tracy, sorry, can you do me a favor and enlarge it, because I can't read it?
I don't know if I can enlarge it. I apologize for that. This is actually 2 pages. So what you will see is that at the top of Monday, it is a literacy focus, and you can see they've maintained the structure of their day as well. You can see it starts with morning meeting, and then it moves on to a mini lesson, and they're looking at approximate times to help parents understand as well. The mini lesson shouldn't last more than 15 minutes, and then the next activity should be no more than 30 minutes, and there's some choice involved.
Tracy, whatever you did for a moment did enlarge it, but the way it is now, there's no point in having it up because it's impossible to read on a home computer.
I think that's the next slide that she showed quickly, and I'm guessing this was just an example of
yeah, because
kind of how it looks.
Yeah.
So I think we can send it. Well, it should be in your packet that Jay.
Yes.
It's actually online too. So
it's easier to read in your packet.
Yeah.
But essentially what I wanted you to see is that it was a content area focus per day. So we were not overwhelming the students and the parents. They were maintaining the structure of of the day so that students felt familiar and understood what would be happening. And then there were suggested time frames in which to work. Something very similar you can see in North Street and Millbury Street. This is a different picture. This is grade 2. It's much easier to read. It's simply because of the layout. But what you can see also, we did at grades 2 through 5 is we maintained the structure of the day. And you can see that if you look under Monday, you can see that the focus here is foundations, and that has been identified as a priority. And then the next day it's writing, and that has been identified as a priority, and so on and so forth. You have reading, math, and science. And the intention here was to make sure that the day was filled, but so that parents understood that if there was a priority, if the other things were going on and they couldn't focus for that entire time, they knew to focus on the priority. And then some parents were actually asking for more. So what you can see here is what grade 2 did is they gave them other options to take a look at as well. Middle school and high school did something a little bit different. They maintained a schedule, basically their class schedule, and they created it so that each class would meet 2 times a week. And so I color-coded Grafton Middle School for you so you could see period 1. It's going to meet on Monday and then again on Wednesday, 2 on Monday, then again on Wednesday, so that kids will see their teachers 2 times a week. The time is structured in a way so that teachers understand how much of direct instruction should be happening and then how much practice time. And then you can see on Friday there are some office hours where teachers are available to answer questions and provide feedback. And the same happened here at Grafton High School. You can see that it is based on the rotation of their periods. Every period is meeting twice a week. And we have some extended block time in order to accomplish any kind of activities or work that may extend beyond that period. And then essentially what we did in grades 6 through 12 is we talked a lot about how do we put a framework and a structure around grading if we're only going to be looking at pass-fail. And we came up with this rating, which I think is fantastic, this grading scale. So when teachers look at work that's completed and giving it feedback, they're going to label it either proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. And then they have a great description for students so they understand how to meet those targets. The double asterisk here in the unsatisfactory is important to note because students are able to redo and retake as needed, given the fact that this is not very traditional in terms of the structure of our learning. And last but not least, I took a quick snapshot of Grafton High School's remote learning page because it does a nice job of capturing in one place all the important information for students and parents. We have the learning parameters and guidelines for students. We have the schedule, rules for virtual meetings so that students understand how it is they should behave and participate in certain virtual meetings. And then what are the grading changes and practices that come with this hiatus. And with that, yep, I can take questions.
Heather?
So first of all, this is so great. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really informative. Just from the high school perspective, the schedule has worked beautifully. It shifts the paradigm a little bit. So it's not me saying like, did you do that work all day? They just get up and they're doing it from 8:30 to 11:30, which is really nice. In terms of grading, I've had a few questions about that. How does this compare with what might be happening around the country? Because at the high school level, of course, people are concerned about getting into school and that sort of thing. I'm just curious about, maybe not even around the country, but what is happening? Is this what Massachusetts has recommended in terms of how to deal with grades?
So I'm not sure if it's what Massachusetts recommended, but I know it's what many area districts are doing. What most of them are doing is they are collapsing or combining Q3 and Q4 and turning it into a semester 2 grade as a pass-fail. That is my understanding of what's happening, and we're currently working with Schoology and PowerSchool to get a better understanding of how to do that, so that both tools are talking to each other, and we have kind of a seamless reporting happening in both places.
I guess I feel like it might be helpful if, even if the guidance counselors, so I have a junior, for example, and now the grades are so important and who knows what's going to happen with SATs and AP and all that. It would be reassuring for parents to get a message around how it's being dealt with, I guess, so that they are not freaking out that their kids are going to be the only ones that have pass fails.
Absolutely. So in terms of reporting to colleges,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would also maybe add GPA, because I've had a few parents question how is GPA being affected
Yep.
with this new standard.
I guess my understanding of that was that this semester is not being included in the GPA. I thought I read that somewhere, or I heard it from Mr. Pignataro. Is that true?
I would say yes, because I'm not sure how it could be included. It doesn't have a numerical grade, so
Right.
it wouldn't factor in. The pass, what will happen, in my understanding of what's going to happen, obviously everything is very fluid and it has a lot to do with what Power School can allow us to do. But what it would technically look like is, so if you look at my son, he is a junior, he's probably in the same place. He will have a P for semester 2 in all of his classes. So his numerical grade will only be calculated through the end of semester 1, his junior year. And then it would pick up again in his senior year. My understanding that I do know that I did just read recently is that College Board has started to move towards, and colleges in general, not waiving the SAT for applicants because of this disruption. I mean, some kids, I mean, I'm sure my Nick is the same as anybody else who has a junior. He's not going to be able to take 2 SATs this year. So they're starting to look towards potentially waiving that. Colleges are moving in that direction. So that they know there has to be some wiggle room, but I can definitely reach out to guidance and have them speak in a mass mailing, so to speak, to these 2 concerns.
Tracy, it's Melissa. I don't have a good idea of how to do this, but I'm really feeling for the kids who, you know, who do that sort of trajectory where maybe freshman year was a little rough, and then they get into their stride in sophomore year, and then they really pick it up in junior year. And colleges really look for that. Like they're much more interested in the kid that did better and better as they went on than the kid that knocked it out of the park in freshman year and then sort of didn't do so well.
Yep.
And so that kid, you know, and they do exist, that kid
Sure.
lost a big opportunity. I'm sort of struggling in my mind. How do we provide an opportunity for that student to
Yeah.
to show that he or she hit their stride?
It's a valid concern, I think. And I think what we're going to have to, like, if I was still at Neshoba Regional High School and facing this, what I would be talking to the guidance counselors about is that letter, that recommendation coming from them would have to speak directly to the fact that there was tremendous growth and progress in terms of work completion and achievement and performance, and that really this blip in terms of the hiatus from school really stopped the colleges from being able to see that coming to fruition. But as a guidance counselor, I could speak to it directly. That's probably the conversations I would start to have with our guidance counselors, and absolutely ones I can have with Grafton High Schools as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that if guidance could provide leadership and in some way maybe even connect with college, you know, admissions, to just start putting some messaging together to, and maybe it's, you know, you're suggesting to kids, well, keep a little journal of the things that you are doing. What are you pursuing during this time? Just to give kids some sense of control over it, and parents a little bit of comfort, because it is definitely harrowing. And Melissa, I know a few kids that are exactly on that track, and it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. It's very tricky. But I'm happy to speak to guidance.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if I had the magic solution, I'd give it to you, but it's rough.
The good thing is it's not just not good, but it's not just Grafton. So it's not just kids, you know, and I know we talked about this last time, but I just really believe, and I've already seen articles that, I mean, colleges know this is happening. This is a life-changing thing. You know, I think I said this 2 weeks ago. Our kids now, like, they're not going to have this, things are just going to change forever, and we don't know what that looks like yet. And it's scary, like Heather mentioned, because we're all still thinking along the same path. And I think that path is going to be a very different path, and we're all coming to terms with it, and it's going to happen in different times.
But it has been my experience for many years in a high school that the guidance counselor recommendation has a fair amount of weight, and it should be explained in that recommendation that the student was performing, was achieving, there was a turnaround, so to speak, and then really the hiatus stopped his or her ability to really bring that to fruition his junior year. I do think that goes a long way.
And Tracy, sorry, I think am I muted? I'm not muted. The other thing that the reality of it is there are some kids who work very, very hard and do extraordinarily well in courses. And I think that it's only fair to assume that they're going to feel that it's somewhat unfair for them to get a pass and somebody who doesn't work as hard to get a pass. You know, there's just so many areas of where you feel like, well, we should try and make it as unstressful as possible. And then at the same time, that puts stress on the high achieving kids. That puts ungodly stress on them because they say, there's no way for me to be recognized for what I do.
Again, the recognition would have to come through that guidance letter. I really think that's one of the things we're going to have to talk about, that I'm going to kind of spearhead a conversation with guidance about, is making sure that those letters are very clear and articulating how students were achieving and performing prior to this blip. And then, of course, there's the beginning of their senior year, because those grades go as well, first quarter, and so goes as well. So I think we're going to be okay. And much like Laura said, we're not the only people. I mean, as far as I know, my junior at Wachusett isn't even going to get a grade Q4. They're not grading anything as of right now. And he's applying to a college that doesn't take SATs. So it'd be interesting to see how his guidance counselor frames that, and because he's pretty high performing, he's an A kid, and I'm just kind of interested to see how it goes. But I think we're all kind of in the same place, and we have to kind of come up with a way to make sure that we're communicating that in a narrative, what's happening with students and why they deserve what they deserve.
Yeah.
I'm just going to think it is, yeah. So if you can communicate that with guidance and even teachers in general, because I was telling my own junior that how she conducts herself now will help guide the teacher recommendation for colleges. So just that can all be communicated to everyone and then back to the parents. I think a lot of parents who have a lot of questions, or just make them feel a little bit better. So that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm happy to do it.
Could I ask another question on a different topic?
Sure.
So we've moved to, I know the work that was provided before came with the message of being optional, which many kids clung to. And that was, I think for reasons other than the work actually being optional.
Yep.
Is this now, if, for example, students are not participating in the way that they need to be to get to this proficient standard, then I guess what are the implications? Like what does that actually look like right now? Is this mandatory, I guess, is the bottom line question.
So essentially what it looks like on the curriculum side is I asked teacher leaders to take a look at the power standards and in Q4, let's say, for example, and pick the power standards of the power standards. So pick the priorities within that list of power standards and move forward with just those few priorities, knowing that in the fall, we're gonna have to relook at scope and sequences, reteach and review, knowing that. So that's the first piece. There is going to be reteaching and review. I'm asking teacher leaders to keep track of those power standards. So when we get back together again, whatever that may be, I can help them reformulate a scope and sequence. So we're making sure all kids are getting the instruction they need. That's the first piece. The second piece is that teachers have been directed to make guidance and special ed and administrators aware if students are not engaging. So really no different as if they were in the school building. If they're not participating, if they're not handing in work, if they're not in discussion boards, teachers are aware that they'll go right to administration and guidance so that there can be some intervention so that we're not going to end up with a failing grade for semester 2. Okay.
That is awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's great.
I have one more question about the power standards. When they're discussing, are the departments also discussing maybe not just what they need for that class, but maybe looking ahead and making sure that you know, I talked to my calculus teacher and she told me what I can skip in pre-calc to make sure the AP kids can do that.
Yes.
So just a lot of communication, which I'm sure they are, but I just want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So the power standards are based on that anyway. So they were identified based on what is needed for the next unit and what is needed for the next class. And most of the planning that's happening is all common planning. So when they're sitting together to identify the power standards, they're having the conversation of, if I'm picking this for pre-algebra, then I absolutely am going to need it for, you know, algebra the next year or calculus or whatever it might be. So yes, that is, but it's a good question, but that is happening. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just had a question, if I can, Laura.
Of course.
My question had to do with special education. I saw the email from Bob and Nicole, which was awesome. And I'm curious to know how we're doing. I mean, it's such a challenge to provide some of these one-on-one services that we provide.
Yep.
How are we delivering special education right now? How are we doing and how are we moving forward with that?
So I can speak to the co-teacher piece. What's happening with co-teachers is they are planning with the gen ed teachers. And in some cases, they are actually participating in the either live or recorded videos delivering instruction, which I think is fantastic to have this duo. So they are present to modify and or accommodate as needed. In terms of one-on-one instruction, if a student needs Wilson services or something like that, we haven't moved down that road yet simply because we're not 100% sure how to do that so that there's parity and consistency in terms of all C-grid services. So that's the best explanation I can give from my end, but I can certainly look into further detail with Bob if you need some more information, Amy.
No, I guess I wanted just kind of an idea of where we're at, because I know this is a process, right? We're not, this is constantly evolving. We're all being as flexible as we can be. And I know that there are parents with concerns, and I want them to know that it's something that's being addressed. It's being worked on.
Yes.
We're not leaving people behind right now. We're still getting up to speed on this.
No, oh, absolutely. And we're, you know, Bob is always looking at guidance coming from the state. He's always talking to other SPED directors. We're in conversations all the time about when to start one-to-one services. So it is something we continue to talk about, and we may very well move in that direction, but like you said, it's a process and it's going to take a little bit of more time and discussion.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Aim.
Any other questions? Tyler, James, I'd love to hear from you guys about how you're the junior here, James, and how it's been going. You don't have to share, but you want to.
I'd say that I had a pretty positive experience with the remote learning so far. It hasn't been too difficult, but it's also not just like busy work. It's pretty useful, and I know with like math and reviewing all that, it was hard to get back into it, but once I started doing it, it started refreshing and got a lot easier.
Great, thanks.
James, do you find that it's easy to get? I find my junior has gotten right into a schedule. He just gets up, he has his breakfast, he gets right online. You know, it's almost like he's, you know, finding a little bit of a groove.
At first, I'd say it was difficult because the first class is 8 a.m. and I was used to sleeping in a little bit, but
Yeah.
After a day or two, it was a pretty smooth transition.
Amy and I were joking that, well, it's not really a joke, but that we got our later start times. This isn't how I wanted it, but
Free.
here we go.
Free.
Always a bright side. Tyler, did you have anything to add?
I've gotten somewhat into the schedule. I might start at 8:45, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
But it's been super easy getting everything on Schoology. I know a lot of my teachers have been doing the pre-recorded videos, so it makes it easier because if you go like a little too, like I know this morning, one of my classes, I was doing the work and I ran late, so I could kind of just pick up it. I didn't have to put it down, put it away, and join a live stream. I could get on and watch the recorded video at kind of my own pace if I needed. If I had to run downstairs and grab something, I was just a little bit delayed, so it's been super easy and super helpful.
Good.
I have a question. I don't even know what I was going to say anymore. So, I know you said that it can be, the remote learning can look like it could be live, it could be video. Is there any guidance as to maybe they should have a live connection, like maybe once a week or every now and then, just because there are certain kids who might need it but not willing to ask for it?
So I don't know if I would say that there's guidance. It is recommended. It is something that we say you should think about doing. But for the most part, what we've said is whatever you record live, you must make sure it's recorded and then offered so that students who may not have gotten up at 8 because they're not used to getting up at 8 can still get that information and do that activity.
All right, thank you.
One of the things I wanted to point out is that it's nice to have the variety of asynchronous versus synchronous, because not all kids can get on at a certain time because they don't have enough devices in the house, or their internet connection can't support 2 parents working from home and 3 kids on a Zoom call. So I think it's great that we didn't just jump to, as some districts have, 100% Zoom calls for 3 hours, because from what I've been reading, that's been a disaster. So hats off to our teachers and our staff for thinking outside the box and realizing that, yeah, face-to-face time is important, but it doesn't have to be that way every day.
I just had a debrief. I've been teaching online for a couple of weeks now, and I just had a debrief with my students who are considerably older and should have more reserves, right, for dealing with all this. And that's something they really emphasized, is that they, despite the fact that they are a media generation, they find it exhausting.
Yeah.
I do a 2.5-hour seminar every day, and they can't do more than that. That 2.5 hours of Zoom is exhausting. It's just hard to concentrate. It's hard to keep your eyes on the screen. It's hard to read people's expressions. It's hard to figure out when it's your turn to talk. So I have done similar things with other work, and I think the teachers are right on with that.
I agree.
Okay, any other questions? I do have a quick question. It's unrelated, but I wanted to bring it up, and I know the answer, but I know there's discussions, but I have not heard an answer about MCAS yet. I saw some, like, we should be reaching out and telling our state rep that but I can't imagine that they're just not, they just haven't been able to figure out how to communicate. Like, there must be something that's just holding back.
Yeah, right when the closure began, maybe even right before it, they applied for a waiver. MCAS is actually under the federal umbrella, so we can't, or the commissioner can't waive or delay MCAS until that waiver is approved, and it simply hasn't been. But the commissioner has pretty openly stated that there will be, once that waiver is approved, there won't be a lot of thought or struggle with that decision. It's a no-brainer once that waiver comes in.
Okay, so we're just waiting on the federal government.
We're waiting on it, but we are in full belief, and Tracy, feel free to speak up if otherwise, that MCAS will be waived. Yep. That's our expectation.
Okay, thanks. Amy?
I just wanted to clarify, when we say waived, and this might be just a question for the state, I don't know. I'm guessing that this year's sophomores will simply take it next year with next year's sophomores. Because it's graduation requirement.
That I don't know. I guess it depends on when we go back. I guess there's that glimmer of hope that some people may have that you could delay it. My thinking at this point is that the 2020, spring 2020 will be waived, and maybe that's in the fall. I have no idea.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Tracy. That was fantastic. I really appreciate it. And thank you again to all of your work and all of the teachers. And, we're only day 2 of our new remote learning. So again, I ask for everybody's flexibility, patience. I don't know. I mean, maybe never mind. I just think this is just something like, this is a really big event, and we're not going to know what the outcome is until it's all over. And I know it's helpful to focus on the things. I guess maybe I just think differently. I don't know. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
So speaking of things that we're going to have to think differently on, we have to talk about the district calendar because spring break is rapidly approaching, even though it feels like the days are 72 hours long. Jay, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. So in the drive folder, I gave my recommendation and just a copy of the 1920 calendar. So our current 2019-2020 calendar has us taking the traditional April break starting the week of the 20th and then going the rest of the year up to our 185th day, which is June 18th. DESE has provided districts with the option of providing remote instruction through April break, those 4 days, because the Monday's a holiday, and in turn holding the last day of the school year on the 181st day, which for us would be June 12th. Last week, after DESE stated this, I did poll the teachers. We had 251 out of approximately 270 reply. 91.4% would like to teach through the break and get out on that 181st day, so the 12th. And I am recommending that given the teacher input, the situation at hand with the quarantine, and the desire to maintain the newly found momentum that we have building with remote learning, that the school committee vote to have school in session April 21st through the 24th.
Thanks, Jay. I will open it up to discussion on that, open it up to discussion. If anybody has any thoughts or questions or concerns about Jay's recommendation. Jen.
I understand where teachers are coming from. I mean, the only thing I will say, although I definitely agree with not stopping for April break because we're just starting to build momentum. The only benefit I see is that if for some reason we go back to school, having that extra week would be good for the students. But I think that's a really big if.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. Granted, this year is unique. We've never had one like it. In my history as a student and as an educator, I've never seen a banner last week of the school year. It could happen this year, but generally it's warm. People are just dying to get out of there. Personally, I think we'd get more done given where we are in April as opposed to the end of June, but that's obviously just my opinion.
Yeah, my initial thought, I had the same thoughts as Jen initially. And then my only other concern with it was it's another week. And this is, again, like what I was saying, if everything goes back, and it's just such a big if, there's another week of childcare. But I'm not prepared to go against 7% of what our educators want. It's at the end of the day, it's 4 days. We still get President's Day off. So in the scheme of what's been going on, there might be some disappointed folks next week, but we'll get through it, or 2 weeks, we'll get through it, and they'll be happier in June. But I would never, at this point, our teachers are doing so much. That's what they want. It's overwhelming. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to fight that based on a hunch. Who knows? So if we're done, I don't want to rush it, but we can take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve remote instruction from April 21st through 24th, the last day being June 12th.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, this will be a roll call vote. Laura Often, aye. Jennifer Conley.
Jen Connolly, aye.
Melissa Maison.
Melissa Maison, aye.
Amy Marr.
Amy Marr, aye.
Heather Riley.
Heather Riley, aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. So Jay, you'll send out a communication. I'm
right.
sure.
I'm sure it will go out, obviously, in social media, but I'll put an update out tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you. And thanks for the work and thanks for reaching out to the teachers. Appreciate that. Future agenda and schedule planning. So this is something I wanted to bring up to the committee. I know the select board, I think right now or at sometime tonight is probably going to be talking about moving elections, which is good news for Heather and Melissa because it means we get to keep you a little longer, which is nice. Or maybe not nice for you, but nice for us. I would like to recommend, regardless, that we push Jay's evaluation out a little bit. I don't personally think that this should be on Jay's to-do list right now with everything that's going on. My first year on the committee was the first override, and they, as a committee, they weren't able to get to his review. So I came on, and as a new member, I didn't say anything. I know that's probably shocking, but I just listened and I didn't have a vote. So regardless of what happens with the elections, for for Melissa and Heather, we would still get your feedback. You would still be a part of it. We could even invite you back to the committee that day, however it happened. I haven't looked at dates on when we could get through this, but I think we could do it in the summer or early on. I talked to Jay and he was fine with it. It doesn't impact him. And I don't think that's something that really, it's a lot of time gathering the evidence. And I would like to recommend that we push it and just reassuring that everybody still will have, this committee will still be the one who evaluates Jay for the 2019-2020 year, and that everything gets collected and will be evaluated and your voices will be heard, but we'll just push it back a little bit so that Jay's not overburdened.
I'm okay with that. That makes sense.
Okay. Everybody's nodding. Any objections? Okay, great. Oh, Amy?
I'm not objecting. I just wanted to ask, do we have to decide when we're pushing it to, or are we okay to just be like, we're putting it off indefinitely, but we'll get back to it?
I think we can, we have really till the end of June 30th. The end of June, I think technically, but I'll have to double check. I think we could just push it back a few weeks, and it'll be okay. And I know I saw some guidance from MASC on this too, so we're not alone in this.
Yeah, they didn't have it. They didn't have any information about that particular question. That was what I was asking.
Yeah, I think as long as we get it done and it's timely, so we're not doing it, this time next year, 2 in a row or anything, that would be not appropriate. But just as we get through this hump, it's like one less thing, and I'm sure he could do. I know he could do it, and I know he doesn't mind. And even for us, it's a lot, and now we want a break to work on it.
Yeah,
so
we've got better things to do right now.
Right, exactly. So thank you, and but we'll make sure we do it. I just want to be, and we'll make sure it's this group. It's all done electronically anyway. So Heather and Amy, what Jay does is he puts a lot of evidence in matching his goals, which of course have all kind of changed now anyway. And you go back and you grade him kind of on a system, I can't even remember what it is, but it's like an O, like for outperformance, satisfactory, something like that, excellence. And if it's below a certain, you have to put comments on why, and it's all done through an electronic program. So it's fairly easy to do, but it is time consuming to do it right. And he does have to pull all the evidence, which he'll have it for you. So, okay, thank you.
Maybe you could go pass fail this year.
I think I'd like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, pass fail to you.
Okay.
We'd have to give detailed feedback, though. I don't know if I have the time.
That wins. I needed that. Okay. So that's it. We've been kind of going week by week with this. I did talk to Jay about do we want to try to get back to kind of normal? I know our administrators are very overwhelmed as well, or not overwhelmed because that makes it sound like they can't handle things, but they have a lot on their plate right now. So I'm trying not to add to their plate from school committee requests. But if we want to move back to getting our school improvement plan reports, and I think you were gonna reach out to people, Jay. I don't know if you had a chance to yet.
I failed in that endeavor.
That's okay. Like I said, there's a lot on people's plates, so I'm trying not to add things like that, but we're trying to be mindful about what we're meeting on, what the public needs to hear right now, what's important for our administrators to do. And so we'll just keep you posted. If you think of anything, though, just reach out to me or Jay and we can get it on the agenda. So we've been a little loosier than I would have, little loosey-goosier than I would have liked.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like, I feel like getting back to normal once the last day of school is done, and then any of those we can start adding back in slowly. I mean, we just kind of need to get through this first, and that's our main priority, is getting through all of this.
Good. I agree. Jay.
I was thinking, we were talking about special education earlier, and I'm guessing that, well, I know for a fact that they're already ramping up their efforts. Maybe for the next meeting, we could have Bob and Nicole on just to give an update in terms of special education and the work that they're doing.
Yeah, that would, if they're able to do that, that would be great.
I agree.
And I had another question, Jay, just kind of latching on to your evaluation. We haven't had a chance to talk about it, but you sent out a survey to the community,
Right.
surveying, I think it was all stakeholders, which I commend you for doing. Are you able to share some of the feedback that you've received?
Yeah, I haven't got a few actually. I checked today, and we're up to about 240 responses, which is pretty good. I think the link's still on the website. We obviously kind of took over the website for coronavirus stuff. So we'll have to figure out how to somehow get my survey. I know it's not really on people's minds, but prior to the evaluation, it would be nice to push it out again to see if anybody that wants to comment, they have the option, because it went out about a week before the closure happened. So I'm going to share it with the committee. I'm happy to share actually the results publicly. I'm totally fine with that. So it was a lot of good feedback. Some good, some positive, some citing things I need to work on, which is exactly why I asked and why I kept it so open-ended in terms of what do I do well, what don't I do well, and how do you think I can do better?
Great. Well, thank you. And he's being a little modest. I did get a sneak peek at some of the comments back, and the majority were super positive, and really grateful that he gave them the opportunity to do that. So thanks for doing that, Jay.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay.
Laura, can I just ask a quick question that's related to special ed? Where I know I saw like an early email about this, and then I wasn't sure where it left off, but maybe when they come in, can they also talk about how planning is going for 504s and IEPs in the future? Is that something that there's just going to be a big backlog, or are they going to be, trying to do those virtually?
They put out an email that was fairly comprehensive last night. I actually sent it out at 4:30 or something. But if you get a chance to look at that, that does cover IEP meetings, 504s. They're going to try to move to basically a remote-based system, which can be, there are going to be some challenges. I had a tech meeting today about that. A lot of people don't have, as we talked about earlier, the bandwidth to necessarily, if we do it off Zoom, it sounds great. This works for all of us, but a lot of prep went into that. If some of the Chromebooks can't handle Zoom, if other things are going on, and parents have a wide degree of ability in terms of their comfort connecting. So we're working to try to figure that out to make it work remotely. But they will definitely be able to speak to that, and I imagine in 2 weeks they're going to have a great deal of information on what's working and what's not.
Great. Amy?
I also, I had a kind of unrelated question. I know this is probably not something you can answer, Jay. Have we heard anything in terms of, because I get this question all the time, and I'm sending them all to you. Like, when is Massachusetts just going to say, this is it, we're done?
I really don't know. Even if I was hooked up to a lie detector, I really don't know. Sometimes we were having every Friday remote meetings with the commissioner and sometimes others from the state, where a couple times we got advance notice of things like the extension of the closure, but we did not have a meeting last Friday. I expect that we will have one this Friday, but everybody, including the superintendents, are focused on the
Right now.
the May 4th piece, but everybody's thinking about that, no question about it.
Well, and just having you say it on camera,
Yeah, I
you've
mean,
now said it out loud, and it'll be in the media, and
yep.
hopefully that'll be reassuring. But I mean, I get questions about, what about prom? What about graduation? We just don't know. We
Oh.
don't know.
Correct.
I know the kids want answers, and I feel really bad for them. Tyler,
Yeah,
I'm looking at you
yeah,
laughing.
me
I
too.
feel for you, man.
Yeah, me too. And they've been fantastic. Jim Pignataro, the principal's held a number of class-wide meetings. Still can't, no matter what the forum, if we don't know the answer, we don't know the answer. I do think, given that the state quarantine, or however it's being termed, lasts up until the 4th, it's hard to believe that we're going to come off that quarantine literally in a few hours, hop on buses and be at school. But there has been nothing official to superintendents in terms of any kind of extension.
Okay. Anything else we want to ask Jay about before we move on to, we don't have minutes, correct?
Correct.
Right. So we get to talk about the budget again.
Ooh,
I know. Oh,
great.
Melissa had something to say.
Jay, my question from the beginning of the meeting, I've talked to a few parents who are very internet savvy and who are themselves teaching online and have young children, and say, this is rough.
Oh yeah.
They say teachers are amazing, and that the very structured content they have now is incredibly welcome. But when you have young children, you still can't go and do your work online and put them in front of the computer. I'm gonna guess that you're gonna say it's way too complicated, but I wonder if there's any way we could do something with the older kids who are in school less time than they were, if there was some sort of pairing we could do, or something where kids could act as online guides or something, because I feel for these parents who say, I'm working 2 jobs.
Sure.
And they can't help it, but I don't know. It
I think
feels
it's a good idea. I'm not ruling it out at all. I don't, Tracy, you can jump in if it just hasn't been on. That hasn't been something that I focused on in any way, shape, or form at this point, but we certainly can. We have a leadership team meeting tomorrow at 10 virtually. And we can certainly talk about that. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Tyler.
I feel as though if it's tough for people who are very savvy and are doing this
Oh yeah,
then I can't imagine if you're a parent who isn't.
absolutely.
And it's not a sense in any way of lack of appreciation. They're
Totally.
so impressed with what's been done and what's offered. But yeah, little kids still need,
Totally understand.
yeah, supervision.
I know in my district, the Student Council and National Honor Society, like they're asking what they can do. So maybe there's just a way, maybe reaching out of something that they can coordinate if they're willing to. I have no idea. It's a big ask. So
I think it would be a perfect project for Tyler.
I'm not good at coordination, but that definitely sounds like something I have a lot of time to kill, and I'd be more than willing to partner up with. If it's 1 or 2 kids, try to help in the best way I can. I don't know. I'm pretty good with tech. I don't know how to make that connection, but I'm more than willing to try.
Perfect.
Okay. I mean, I would just be cautious about we think kids have a lot of time, but we're also watching them process and deal with things. And it's a lot for everybody. And we're 2 working parents in my house. We're very tech savvy. I'm very in touch in what's going on with the school district. And I also struggled, and I said, it's okay to struggle. Like, we're all struggling. And I think this is uncomfortable for people to it's uncomfortable, and this is brand new and it's uncomfortable, but we're gonna get through it. And I love that idea, but I would make sure it was kids who were really not feeling like this is one more thing that's on them, because it's a lot for them too. I mean, their lives are, Tracy.
And I do want to say that sometimes what I hear from parents is, if I can't get this done, is my child going to fall behind? No, they're not going to fall behind, because as I said, they've pared the curriculum down to just the priorities, and they know they're going to have to reteach those priorities. So if you can't get to it, it's okay. It's not going to just disappear. It's going to show up again, and we're going to make sure that teachers are providing direct instruction and the adequate practice around it so that they can grasp those skills and then build on next year or whenever it is we return to school. So no worries if you can't get to it, because it is going to happen at some point.
And that's why I like somebody mentioned the flexibility of it. Like, we only have really, I found out, I thought we had two, we only have one working Chromebook. My daughter needs it in the morning. My son does it, takes it later, or we do it when we would have done homework time. So it's nice that we don't have to be up, they both don't have to be up at 8 o'clock on calls, because we wouldn't be able to do it. So, okay. So I don't know how much on the budget we have, but we put it on just in case something magical came out of that meeting last night. Thank you all again for participating in that meeting. Jay, do you have anything to add?
Do you want me to talk about FY21 at all?
Yeah, Amy does, yes.
Oh, all right.
She's nodding vigorously.
And I can try to answer any questions you have. In a very general sense, we should be to the good financially in FY20. That's this current year. Obviously, the degree to which we are to the good is going to vary depending on when the closure ends. But we don't have athletic transportation right now. We have lower energy costs. There are a lot of things that are to the good. We also have some things that are negative, if you will, financially. One example is preschool tuition. We are still paying our preschool staff, but we are not bringing in preschool tuition because the kids aren't going to preschool. But in the end, we expect to be to the good. That being said, for FY20, we don't know the financial harm that's going to be absorbed in 21, but there will be costs in 21, and that again starts on July 1st. So if we have to change existing summer school, summer services, if those get increased, that's going to obviously be monies that were not planned for. So our big question is, to what degree are we going to experience unanticipated costs in 21 right now? That's about all I have.
I did have a question about, I think Dan mentioned this at the last meeting, that we don't have any more funds encumbered for food beyond, I think you said, did you say April 20, Dan? Oh, you're muted.
There's been an update from the state since the last meeting, so I can update you on all the updates. But the USDA put out a waiver, or gave Massachusetts a waiver, so that all districts can be reimbursed for every meal they're serving. Before that, we didn't qualify for reimbursement because we were under 50%, like free and reduced. So now we're allowed to serve 7 meals of, everyday meals, and we'll get fully reimbursed for them. So I don't think we'll need to use any general fund money for the food assistance. So I think we can just keep going as long as we're able to.
Oh, great. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, great. And we do have a warrant.
I was unaware that we had a warrant.
I think so, right?
I didn't.
It's in the drive folder. I don't think any harm's done if we wait. If people feel more.
If people haven't looked at it, I'd rather Do
Yeah,
it
it's,
next time.
if it might be in the book, but it's not separate, so I didn't see it.
Did everybody else?
I didn't see it.
Okay, all right, well, we'll just pass over the warrant and we
Right.
can vote on it next time. Better that than us blindly approving a warrant. Okay, great, and we don't need an executive session, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have to take a roll call vote. Laura Often, aye.
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Melissa,
I'm forgetting. Melissa Maison, aye.
Amy Marr,
Amy Marr, aye.
Heather Riley.
Heather Riley, aye.
Excellent. Thank you all. Good night and stay safe.